By one vote, Congress refused to rein in an undeclared war with Iran. That is the raw, unvarnished reality of what happened in Washington this week.
Yeah, it really is.
Welcome to today's deep dive.
Well,
We're cutting through all the speculative drama today and just looking exclusively at the hard data. We want to see what state legislatures and Congress actually voted on and passed over the last 7 days.
right, just the raw source material.
Exactly. And when you look at that data, this very clear overarching theme emerges. It's basically like the federal power grid just completely blew out and the 50 state generators just picked up the load. Washington is locked in paralysis while the states are, well, they're aggressively rewriting the rules of your daily life.
I mean, that power grid metaphor is perfectly spot on for understanding this moment. We operate under this illusion of centralized action, right? Like, we assume Washington is providing all the electricity for the entire country.
Right, but they just aren't.
No, not at all. The reality right now is entirely about decentralized momentum. It actually brings to mind Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis.
Oh, right, the whole laboratories of democracy concept.
Exactly, yeah. A century ago, he coined that phrase that the states are the laboratories of democracy. He basically argued that a single courageous state could try novel experiments without, risking the rest of the country. And right now, those 50 state generators are running on completely different fuels. They're testing real solutions in real time, while the federal grid is just completely dark.
Well, before we dive into those state laboratories, I think we should establish the federal baseline. Starting with that one vote margin I mentioned earlier, the Senate killed an Iran war powers resolution. The vote was 46-51. And this wasn't just like a standard bill, right? It was an H-Con res.
Yeah, concurrent resolution, which is a really important technical distinction.
How so?
Well, an H-Con res is a type of legislative maneuver that doesn't actually require the president's signature to have force. And it's specifically the mechanism used under the War Powers Act to try and force the withdrawal of troops from an undeclared conflict.
Oh.
Yeah, and the ticking clock here is vital to understand. Under the War Powers Act, Congress has a strict 60-day window to assert authority over an unauthorized military action. And that deadline is May 1st.
So by voting this down 46-51, they're just letting it expire.
Exactly. Congress is letting that window slam shut. And simultaneously, the Pentagon just submitted a $200 billion Iran war supplemental funding request to fuel that exact same conflict.
So the military apparatus just keeps moving. But when we look at domestic policy, specifically public lands, we see Congress acting by an incredibly slim margin again. The Senate voted 50-49 to revoke a 20-year mineral ban near Minnesota's Boundary Waters Canoe area.
Right, which paves the way for a major copper mine.
Right. But I have to admit, I'm a little confused here. I thought it took 60 votes to bypass a filibuster and get literally anything done in the Senate. How did they revoke a massive environmental ban with only 50 votes?
Yeah, they used a mechanism called the Congressional Review Act, or the CRA.
Okay, what exactly is the CRA?
It's essentially a legislative loophole designed entirely for deregulation. It dictates that if a federal agency creates a new rule like, say, the Interior Department banning mining near the Boundary Waters, Congress can overturn that specific agency rule using just a simple majority.
Oh, so just 51 votes.
Right, or in this case, 50 votes plus a tiebreaker. You don't need 60 votes because the CRA bypasses the filibuster entirely.
That seems like a massive loophole.
It is, but it's a blunt instrument. It can only be used to destroy an administrative rule, It cannot be used to build new comprehensive policy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at our data on amendment.app, and there are a couple of genuinely bipartisan bills sitting in the House.
Yeah.
Like we have H.R. 8250, the Parents Decide Act, which would force Apple and Google to verify user ages at the operating system level.
Right, so every single app doesn't have to do it individually.
Exactly. And we also have H.R. 7743, the Stop ICE Intimidation XC, which freezes IC's contract with that facial recognition firm, Clearview AI. But, they aren't moving at all. Why are H.R. 8250 and H.R. 7743 just gathering dust in committee if both sides of the aisle seemingly agree on them?
It's just a symptom of that structural paralysis we talked about. The only things that possess enough kinetic energy to pierce modern federal gridlock are the military-industrial complex and physical resource extraction.
So War and Copper can get 51 votes.
Yeah, exactly. War and copper can move. everything else, even widely supported consumer protections like H.R. 8250 and H.R. 7743, they simply die in the friction of the committee process.
But that federal freeze, it doesn't just create a political headache in Washington. It creates a massive power vacuum. And right
Yeah.
now, state politicians are rushing right into that void to seize control over how our elections will actually be run.
Yeah, the state generators are powering up.
They really are. Take Virginia. Voters just passed a redistricting amendment, 51.5% to 48.5%. And that resulted in Virginia HB 29, a brand new map that projects to drastically shift their entire congressional delegation.
And the thing is, Virginia HB 29 is part of a 7-state redistricting wave happening at this exact moment. The lines that dictate the balance of power in the House of Representatives are being redrawn locally.
Right.
But, it is not just the maps. It is the actual machinery of how a ballot is cast and counted.
Which brings us to Virginia HB 965. Virginia signed HB 965, officially joining the NPVIC.
The National Popular Right Interstate Compact.
Right. Now, wait, if I understand this correctly, they are essentially creating a mechanism to bypass the Electoral College without actually amending the Constitution.
That is precisely what the MTVIC does. The Constitution allows states to allocate their electoral votes however they see fit.
Okay.
So the NPVIC is an agreement where member states pledge to award all of their electoral votes to whichever presidential candidate wins the overall national popular vote.
Regardless of who won their specific state.
Exactly. But the catch is that the compact only activates once it is joined by states representing at least 270 electoral votes. The number needed to win the presidency.
And where are they at now?
With Virginia passing HB 965, the compact now holds 222 electoral votes. It is organically rewriting the math of the presidency entirely outside of Congress.
That's wild. Virginia also passed SB 57 to rejoin ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center.
Yeah.
That's the system states use to cross-reference databases and ensure, dead people or people who moved aren't still on the voter rolls.
Right, they're shoring up your local systems.
But then you look at other states, and the mechanics are shifting in wildly different directions. Nebraska passed LB 1075, banning foreign nationals from contributing to ballot measures. Oklahoma advanced SGR 47, requiring voter ID at the polls.
Yeah?
And Indiana passed SB 10, which completely bans the use of student IDs for voting.
Yeah.
And the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals just upheld that.
The sheer variance in these state-by-state rules fundamentally alters the voter experience.
I mean, it feels like 50 different game developers are simultaneously rewriting the rules of Monopoly while you're already playing the game. One developer says you don't need the dice anymore. Another says you have to show a specific state-issued ID to buy Baltic Avenue, and another just completely redrew the property lines.
It's chaos.
How does a regular person even know how to play the game when the mechanics change every time they cross a state line?
Well, it creates immense friction for the voter. But the key takeaway here is that these localized changes, like the ID requirements in Indiana SB 10 or the map drawn by Virginia HB 29, these are the actual levers of power.
Right, not the federal debates.
Exactly. Washington is arguing over the theoretical philosophy of democracy, but the states are actively writing the code that runs the voting machines.
Okay, so if the elections rulebook dictates how we choose our leaders, the next logical question is what those leaders are actually legislating. And this is where the daily reality for you, the listener, is really being shaped.
Oh, absolutely.
When you pivot away from the ballot box and look at, say, the pharmacy counter or the smartphone in your pocket, the state-level action is just explosive.
This is Brandeis's laboratories of democracy functioning at peak capacity. Because the federal grid blew out and hasn't produced a comprehensive patient protection package in years, the states are stepping in to shield their citizens.
Let's look at medical debt as an example. Maine just passed LD 2129. This law outright bans medical debt collectors from filing liens on a patient's home.
Which is huge.
It is. Let's explain that mechanism because it's honestly terrifying. Before Maine LD 2129, if you got sick in Maine and couldn't pay the hospital, a debt collector could legally attach a lien to your house.
Meaning you're trapped.
Right. You cannot sell your home or refinance it without paying the debt collector first. In severe cases, they can literally force a foreclosure to get their money.
And medical debt is incredibly common.
Yeah, according to the data, 46% of Maine households reported taking on medical debt in the last 2 years. That is nearly half the state living under the threat of losing their property to a hospital bill. Maine LD 2129 completely neutralizes that threat.
And we see similar protective measures elsewhere. In Maryland, we see HB 945, which mandates unannounced annual inspections of every licensed nursing home in the state. That completely changes the compliance structure for elder care facilities.
And the specificity in some of these bills is amazing. Like, New York passed A00403, which requires insurance to cover scalp cooling devices for chemotherapy patients.
That's a fascinating one.
The mechanism here is brilliant. Chemotherapy targets rapidly dividing cells, which unfortunately includes hair follicles, leading to hair loss. But scalp cooling devices literally freeze the scalp during treatment. It constricts the blood vessels so the chemo drugs can't reach the follicles, which preserves the patient's hair.
But they're incredibly expensive, right?
Yeah, they cost thousands of dollars, so insurance companies heavily fought against covering them. But with A00430, New York just forced the insurance companies' hands.
We also see structural labor shifts happening locally. Virginia passed HB 1207, creating up to 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. California advanced AB 2386, which creates provisional licenses for international doctors to practice in underserved clinics, converting to full licenses after 3 years to combat their rural physician shortages.
Every single one of those bills changes human lives at a foundational level. And, it's not just healthcare. The states are moving at warp speed on artificial intelligence right now.
Oh, they definitely are.
When I was looking at the roll call data, the numbers were staggering. Tennessee passed HB 1898 by a vote of 94-0. It requires Frontier AI labs to publish their safety plans.
And just for context, Frontier AI is the industry term for the absolute largest, most powerful general-purpose models.
Like the really massive one.
Right, the systems that require massive data centers to train, the ones pushing toward artificial general intelligence. Tennessee HB 1898 dictates that if you are building one of these cognitive engines, you cannot keep your risk mitigation strategies a corporate secret.
And Alabama went even further with HB 351. It passed unanimously 104-0 in the House, 34-0 in the Senate.
Wow.
Yeah. Alabama HB 351 gives every Alabama resident the right to opt out of AI profiling. If a black box algorithm denies your apartment application or auto-rejects your resume for a job, you can legally demand a human review.
That's a massive consumer right.
And over in Oregon, SB 1546 lets Oregon users sue chatbot makers directly by granting a private right of action.
Okay, we really need to underline what a private right of action means in Oregon SB 1546. Normally, if a corporation violates a consumer protection law, only the state attorney general has the authority to sue them.
Right, you're at the mercy of the state.
Exactly. You, as a citizen, just have to hope the government takes your case. A private right of action changes the liability math entirely. It gives you, the individual consumer, the right to take that AI company to court yourself.
Which is huge. But this brings up a glaring question. We are looking at bills like Tennessee HB 1898 and Alabama HB 351 passing with these 94-0 and 104-0 margins. These are massive, life-altering consumer protections dealing with the most advanced technology on Earth.
Yay.
Why isn't this the lead story everywhere? Are the states just shipping these laws because they know Congress is paralyzed?
Yes. They are shipping first because the federal grid is dead. But look at the strategic endgame of Brandeis's laboratories.
What do you mean?
Well, when you have a 50-state patchwork of laws where Tennessee HB 1898 threatens civil fines, Alabama HB 351 requires human opt-outs, and Oregon SB 1546 unleashes direct citizen lawsuits, it creates an absolute compliance nightmare for massive tech companies.
Oh, because they have to navigate all of them.
Exactly. Eventually, tracking 50 different sets of rules becomes so expensive that the tech industry itself will march into Washington and beg Congress to pass a single federal standard. The states are aggressively regulating right now to force federal action later.
That is so strategic. Let's transition to some of the quietest experiments happening under the radar. Things that shape daily reality, but just don't fit into a neat national narrative.
Sure.
New Jersey passed S 3870, which ends a 50-year ban on building new nuclear power plants in the state. Massachusetts passed H 5350, overhauling their Cannabis Control Commission and doubling legal possession limits.
Both very significant shifts.
And Oklahoma pushed through SB 1778, a $26 million literacy overhaul that actually allows schools to hold back third graders if they aren't reading at grade level.
That Oklahoma bill, SB 1778, targets a really critical developmental milestone. Educational researchers note that up until third grade, students are learning to read, but after third grade, they are reading to learn.
Right, the foundation shifts.
Exactly. If you pass a student who lacks that foundation, they fail at every subsequent subject. It's a huge intervention.
And then there is Minnesota SF 2511, which I have to say is just brilliant. It legalizes happy hours at nursing homes. Senior residents actually testify that they simply wanted to be able to have a beer without having to coordinate a trip outside their facility.
I love that one.
It's incredibly specific, but it just proves that local government can still be deeply empathetic and responsive to human needs. Yet there is a bizarre contradiction in all of this. We pulled the Resist bot data for the week, which tracks where citizens are sending petitions and directing their political energy.
And where's it all going?
Americans are intensely petitioning Washington. They are demanding action from Congress on things like H.R. 7740 to stop ICE from using facial recognition.
The disconnect there is just profound. Americans are directing almost all of their anger, their pressure, and their petitions at the dead federal grid. We are essentially shouting at a dark building.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
Meanwhile, the state generators are quietly and efficiently humming along, writing the actual laws that govern your medical debt, your digital privacy, and your immediate environment.
So what is the takeaway for you, the listener, in all this? While Washington is locked in a bitter stalemate, the states are actively writing the everyday life rulebook. Your daily reality is being shaped right now, not in the halls of Congress, but in your state capital.
That's right.
That is where the rules governing the AI reading your job application, the medical debt threatening your home, and your fundamental voting rights are actively being decided.
Brandeis's laboratories of democracy are running full tilt, and it really leaves you with a critical thought to mull over. When corporate compliance teams eventually have to navigate 50 entirely distinct regulatory ecosystems, where an AI can decide your credit score in one state but is legally banned from doing so right across the border under Alabama HB 351, or where a hospital can seize your home in one state but is completely blocked by Maine LD 2129, that level of friction is going to fundamentally reshape how national commerce even operates.
For the full text, status, and plain English breakdown of any bill we mentioned today, head to amendment.app.